Mike Ferrantino here at Santa Cruz Bicycles. First day of dirt demo. The hangovers have not kicked in yet. I'll tell you about some new bikes we've got coming out. The latest is our Santa Cruz Tallboy, which we're going to be taking a look at. Third experiment in carbon fiber, first ever 29-inch bike we've made. Come take a look. What we got is our carbon fiber chassis. We've been having really good luck with the carbon fiber development that we started a year and a half ago. With this, it's a one-piece molded process. So you have a single mold, single layup process for the front triangle as well as for the rear triangle. A lot of other companies may talk about a single molding process and they're probably talking out their ass. Usually it's tube to tube, bonded together kind of thing. This is really careful mandrels, really precise wall control, one-piece layup and curing process for each of these triangles. That may not sound like a whole lot, but what that allows us to do is with a minimum of material, create a really high strength, high stiffness, super potent frame that doesn't really weigh much. Medium or a large in this 29-inch frame with shock, 100 millimeters of travel, weighs about 5 pounds, our target on that. This is an extra large, that and the XXL, you're probably getting up into the 5.3, 5.4 pound range. That still is about 1.5 to 2 pounds lighter than most of your aluminum competition in a similar travel. It's also got Vpp Suspension. Our virtual pivot point suspension is patented and used by us and Intense Bikes at the moment. It creates a lot of opportunities for us in terms of how we design a bike. With a bike like this, which is more of a cross-country platform, we're able to tune it for really high pedaling efficiency and responsiveness, good acceleration power, and at the same time, good small bump absorption and responsive pedaling behavior. Good resistance to bottom out, solid suspension. Carbon fiber upper link that rides on angular contact bearings. Aluminum lower link with grease ports built into it. We'll lift it up so you can take a look at that. Also runs on angular contact bearings. The bearings can be preloaded. We've got this super trick hardware on it where we have these aluminum axles that go through, and then there's this little conical washer that bolts into it, and then a little titanium bolt that tightens down on it and preloads everything. Locks it into the frame on this side, threads into the frame on the back side. It's about the trickiest suspension link hardware that's out there at the moment. No one else is really putting this amount of attention to detail into the bikes that we are. Pretty proud of it. 29-inch wheels, love them or hate them. Most people seem to be really starting to love them now. For cross-country applications, they roll really well, they roll fast, they hold momentum amazingly. They've got a larger approach angle because of the larger diameter, so they roll over small trail garbage a lot more unconsciously. Some people say it feels like a bike with more travel. I don't know if that's necessarily all that accurate. They roll fast though. For endurance racers and your day-long athletes, this bike is going to kick ass. Okay, we're looking at our Blur LT-C, Blur LT Carbon here. Same as our well-loved Blur LT, which was the first bike to get our next generation of Vpp suspension almost 2 years ago now. This is rendered in carbon fiber. Once again, the stuff that we've been experimenting with in terms of our carbon fibers, this proprietary one-piece layup process that allows us to get really good strength and really good weight. The strength to weight characteristics of these bikes are stupid strong. This bike, in terms of how it's tested out on the machines that break things, where we have a number of total failure tests as well as 14 different just stiffness tests that we engage in. The only bike that kind of measures up close that we manufacture would be like a Bullet, which is a 9 or a 10 pound frame. This thing is a 5.4 pound frame and shock with 140 millimeters of rear travel. It is the strongest and stiffest bike we make, with the exception of the Bullet in terms of its total failure. In terms of chassis stiffness, flex resistance, it's the stiffest puppy we've got. It rides entirely differently. A lot of what we went for with this wasn't necessarily trying to make a bike lighter. If we wanted to pursue super lightweight, we probably could have got the frame and shock weight under 5 pounds. What we wanted was a ride characteristic. We ended up with a bike that there's no flex in this chassis whatsoever. You slap a through axle fork on it and you've got a 5.5-inch travel bike that behaves with all the precision of a much bigger hit bike. You can rail with this puppy. Blur XC Carbon. Beautiful little bike. Our first venture in carbon fiber that has spawned the bikes that we've gone after this, the Blur LT and the Tallboy. We'd reached a point with the aluminum Blur XC where we got the frame down to about 5 pounds of shock. We were really happy with how it worked in some ways, but it was flexy and it was fragile and we weren't weren't happy with the way it rode. That led us to start investigating carbon fiber, and that led us to this bike. 4.2 pound frame and shock weight, 105 millimeter travel, Vpp suspension, grease ports in the lower pivot, angular contact bearings throughout, carbon fiber upper link. A complete bike you could probably build up. I think Speedgoat built one up as light as 19 pounds. We build them up mostly around about 23, 24 with, say, XTR componentry. That's for a 4-inch travel cross-country bike. Stiffness and strength of this thing, again, I'm going to be pounding that one home as much as I can. This is a stiff little bike. It is going to kick the tar out of almost anything else in this weight range as far as how the wheels stay, how it handles, how much it resists flex. There's no weight limits on it. You don't have to worry about being 180 pounds or 200 pounds. We're not going to say you can't ride it. This here is the much misunderstood Santa Cruz Driver 8. We released this puppy early in 2009, and a lot of people automatically expected it to be sort of a long-awaited replacement for the VP Free, which had preceded it, partly because of the same amount of travel. It's an 8-inch rear travel bike, Vpp suspension, shares a lot of design ideology with the V10, but there's some differences in execution that make this a different beast entirely. I'm going to get into criticism aspect first, though, on this. A lot of people, when it came out, their first words were like, oh, it didn't have a front derailleur, oh, we can't put chain rings on it. Look, built up, these bikes are going to weigh about 40 pounds. It's got 8 inches of rear travel. Why do you want a front derailleur? You don't, look, hey, seat, woo, woo, woo. You can move the seat up and down 7 inches, isn't that worth something? Front chain rings, why? Put one on, use a chain guide, be happy. You got 8 inches of travel, you need a chain guide, you don't need a front derailleur. Enough ranting about that. What we got here? 150 millimeter spacing, Maxle through axle in the rear, ISC G05 compatibility, so you can run the latest generation of chain guides. Big beefy lower pivot, carbon fiber upper link. The bottom here, double rows of cartridge bearings on each side. Big overbuilt cartridge bearings on the top end of it. A lot of hydroformed, heavy tubing. This is not designed to be a cross-country bike. This is designed to be an abusable park bike, an all-mountain, all-duty bomber. It's primarily, if the easiest way to look at it would be like your daily use downhill bike. V10s are awesome, but they are a light experiment for what they are. They're a 10-inch travel bike that are designed to just plow at high speed down World Cup courses. The Driver 8, a little bit less travel, slightly revised geometry in the linkage, so it tends to be what would be easiest way to describe it is more poppable. It's more friendly to jump. It likes to come up a little more. The V10 sits deeper into its travel and sticks to the ground more. This bike is more fun to jump, more fun to play around with, but it is still a totally capable, full function downhill bike that you can also just abuse heavily.